The Walt Disney stock took an absolute beating on Friday, dropping 3% of its total value, but that's not all. Disney decimated the Dow Jones along with a company that you might not think is associated with the House of Mouse. And yet there is a connective bond here that we need to look at. A secret sauce, a secret person who is connecting Disney and Nike, and perhaps Chinese interests that are driving down the hopes of investors. Hello folks, welcome back to the Pro Channel, where we endeavor to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. Sometimes that means we need to go deep into topics where you will not find anyone else covering these sorts of things. We are going there today. Joining me to do this is Vash Sky of @ThatPodPlace, also known as T3PO. Folks, if you're not yet subscribed over there, go right now in a new window and just click on @ThatPodPlace and make sure you subscribe. Vash is doing such a great job with that channel. Vash, welcome back.
Happy to be back. Thank you so much for having me. This is a particularly interesting topic because, man, oh man, we saw some very interesting things on Wall Street, considering with these two companies.
Yes, this was something else. Dow was wiped out by Nike and Walt Disney. It was not a terrible day for the stock market, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average was shellacked. It was shellacked by a huge company inside the Dow, which is Nike, dropping essentially 20%, and then Disney also dropping 3%. This is out of MarketWatch.com. It says the Dow Industrial Average is down Friday afternoon, with shares of Nike and Walt Disney delivering the stiffest headwinds for the price-weighted average. Shares of Nike and Walt Disney are contributing to the blue chip gauge's intraday decline, and it did not get better after this ended in terms of where it went. But listen, I'm here to tell you, Vash, there's something going on here that a lot of folks need to know about, and that is that Disney and Nike have a connection that isn't apparent straight off the bat. I want to show this real quick, and I think people will be interested in what we have. Nike warns of falling sales as upstarts crowd its business, Stocksy's worst day on record. And take a look at this. This is out of Hope King. It says Nike's business is more of an oof than a swoosh at the moment. That Nike drop was impressive, just alongside Disney, and it just so happens there's one person working at Disney and Nike at the very highest levels, and that the strategy of both these companies may be coming to bear with the drop. Now, folks, we're not here to give you financial advice in any way whatsoever, but we are here to give you information that you might want to know. This is back from January 11th, 2023 from the Walt Disney Company. It's a public release statement. It says Mark Parker to be named chairman of the Walt Disney Company. Now, prior to this, Susan Arnold was the head of the Disney board. But remember, folks, she was gotten rid of shortly after Bob Chapek was gotten rid of. And then apparently Bob Iger brought in his boy, Mark Parker. Now, Mark Parker is not only the head of Nike, but apparently he's also very well connected in China. And we know that Bob Iger views his theme park investments in China as one of the crowning jewels of his entire reign at Disney. Let's read this real quick. It says, Parker, a Disney director since 2016 and executive chairman of Nike, will succeed Susan Arnold as independent chairman following annual meeting of shareholders. Again, folks, back January 11th, 2023. So the executive chairman of Nike just so happens to be the same guy who is the head of the board of directors for the Walt Disney Company. Vash, what can you tell us about this Mark Parker, who apparently it was a very bad day for Mr. Parker, both of his companies combined to wallop investors of the Dow? What do we know about him?
We know a couple of things. So obviously he joined Nike in 1979, worked his way up to become the company's CEO in 2006, and in 2016 he was made a chair. Well, he was made a director of he was made a chairman of the board at Nike. Now, around that same time, in 2016, he was brought on also to be a director on the board of Disney as well. And then, like you said, Susan Arnold steps down, I believe, in 2023, and that's when he's made a chairman of the board at Disney as well, which is a very interesting role for him because I don't really know of any one executive that has had a chairman position on both companies like this. And I think Nelson Peltz also pointed this out, like, ooh, maybe this guy's a little bit spread too thin. Also, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's also supposed to be leading the effort to find the next CEO for the Walt Disney Company. Isn't that correct?
Well, how about that? Yes, indeedly doodly. He's one of those, as you would expect the head of the board of the directors for the Walt Disney Company to be. But I'll say this too, Vash. What does a guy who's worked 30 years for a shoe company, what does he know about a giant theme park and movie entertainment corporation such as Disney? He does not seem to be the kind of guy who would know much of anything about this business model. But oh wait, China. That's right, folks, China. And we're going to get to that in just a second and talk about why we think he's at the head of the Disney board, what it is Bob Iger's after, and why it's tanking, we believe, both of these companies in terms of their stocks. But Vash, before we do that, I also want to say there's another thing that some folks have been asking about that we need to address. We're not a political channel, but this is a distinctly political question. There are those, Vash, who say that the presidential debate preceding this Disney stock drop, that it may have caused people to wonder if Disney could face intense scrutiny from a new executive branch leadership, because one of the individuals in the debate clearly did not perform well. And that has caused many to reassess where the direction of the United States is going to be going. And at the very least, I think we can say that there's a higher likelihood now that Disney will face intense scrutiny from the U.S. government over their DEI, ESG stuff, among other things. So, Vash, what do you make of this idea that maybe it's not China? Maybe it's not this Mark Parker connective tissue, but perhaps people watched what happened in the presidential debate and said, uh-oh, Disney might be in trouble. What do you think of that one?
Well, it's an interesting idea because I believe the polling following that debate had most voters suggesting that, I think, well, not most, but 20% of voters, I should say, believing that the company was heading in the wrong direction. It's not very good at all. When you talk about the scrutiny laid at Disney's feet right here, especially when it comes to a DOJ that's maybe headed up by a president with the opposition candidate right now, that is very, I would have to believe that's very concerning. Also, too, we know that the DOJ is looking into not only the whole DEI ESG thing, but also, too, they're looking into Hulu and ESPN, and whether or not Disney can actually own both those things and whether it violates antitrust laws. So that's kind of something playing in the background right now. We'll have to see what the DOJ ultimately decides. But again, if there's a change out in the presidency, well, maybe that goes a certain way that it wouldn't have otherwise gone.
Now, very minor correction. You know what you're talking about, Vash. But it's going to be the SEC, not the DOJ. Same idea, because they're both under the executive branch. But I'll say this. I think, given how many of the higher-ups in Disney have come from the Biden administration, there's a certain amount of defense that has been created for the Disney company by Bob Iger through those hires. And they're actually detrimental if the executive branch swings into the other political party. Just an idea. Right. I want to read this, though, folks. This is the thing you're here for. I want to show you what I think is causing some real distress in these stocks. Again, no financial advice. We're not telling you what to do. But, in the past, we covered the fact that Disney is dumping tons and tons of money. In fact, it's been in the last 2 weeks we covered this topic, that Disney is dumping tons of money into the Chinese theme parks at very, very little return. Huge amounts of money spent, for example, in the Hong Kong Disneyland, and it's giving revenues that amount to about 1/60th to 1/70th of all of the parks division revenue. Meanwhile, Disney World in Florida generates 1/3, not of the division, but of the entire company, 1/3 of all the profit for the entire company. And Disney World does not often get the best when it comes to additions. Splash Mounds and Tiana's Bayou Adventure struggles to stay open. But so here's what I'm looking at, folks. And you see what you think about this. You drop a comment down below and tell us. This is out of FDRA.org. It's something that came out way back in March. I think it matters. And here's what it says. Nike chief executive Mark Parker. Remember, the chief executive of Nike is the head of the board also of Disney. Why would that be? turned his global focus to China, not Ukraine, in an interview Thursday with a CNBC interviewer. Parker's interview was timed to coincide with Nike's introduction Thursday of the Magista soccer shoe. Maybe it's Magista, I'm not sure. The product release is one of several from Nike's soccer division, timed to coincide with the 2014 World Cup starting in June in Brazil. Parker's statement about China is timely and telling, given the company's forecast of flat growth for that Asian nation in recent quarters, contrasting with rapid expansion in recent years. Here are Parker's remarks transcribed from a web-posted version of the interview. And what it goes on to talk about is how well he expects China to do and Nike to do in China. Well, folks, again, hopping back to Axios, there's Nike. Just a few months later, Nike is dropping badly, Disney dropping badly, both of these companies investing heavily in China. And I think that there's danger ahead for both of these companies. I've said this before, Vash, I'll say it again. If China does anything with the little island that's outside of their, what would we say? There's an island in the ocean that China's very interested in. Folks, we have to be careful right here on this platform about even saying it. If something happens, a conflict emerges, and I think that's more likely now than it was a few days ago. I'm not saying it, don't want it to happen, but folks are going to tell you, Disney's in a real pickle. I mean, if that happens, Disney's in a really bad situation with their parks because they can't move those parks. They're stuck there, and that could be a hostile situation, gravely hostile. Nike's in the same sort of situation where they are dependent on China, and the Chinese economy is not doing so swell. Vash, Mark Parker, he's brought in Bob Iger. He's the guy who replaces Susan Arnold, who was seemed to be favorable to Bob Chapek. And I'm just seeing more headwinds here. Where I want to wrap up though, Vash, and I want to hand this to you for the final word on it. You know, Disney was supposed to do really well after they got rid of Nelson Peltz, right? That was the whole idea, is get rid of Nelson Peltz, and they were free, no more distractions. They were going to be just A-okay, totally fine. And, you know, that's not happening. Disney and Nike, it's not at the same level, but neither looks good here. And if we were to go back, you know, into a longer time frame to look at this, we're going back down again. We're following that same pattern. What do you think is going to happen, Vash? Where are we going with this?
I can tell you exactly where we're going. So, you'll note that Mark Parker in 2016 was added to the Disney board. In November of that year, Hong Kong announced a major multi-year expansion project that obviously it was going to see Marvel significantly expand its presence in the Hong Kong Disneyland, and also to the Frozen attractions and so forth. Well, last year it was recently revealed that they only spent about half of the funds allocated towards that project. Well, a couple days ago they said they were moving forward with expanding the Marvel presence there. I believe the whatever Marvel attraction that was on the table for Disney California Adventure is also coming to Hong Kong, and they said they're moving forward. But you can kind of see that influence from Mark Parker that he has, where they place enhanced emphasis on a place like China, and maybe perhaps, like you said, at their own detriment, because obviously anything could happen in that region, and that's really the problem. And in Nike's case, they reported on their last earnings call that they're experiencing major softening in that country, which is particularly damaging because they've placed so much emphasis on sales in that country. We know that the Chinese market in terms of box office hasn't been nearly as robust as it had been years prior, and even then they were only getting a small portion of the box office returns, that is American distributors. So it's really a mess, bro. It really is. And if some kind of conflict breaks out, if some big geopolitical change happens, I can't really. It's hard to foresee the Walt Disney Company or even Nike getting out of that unscathed. They would be damaged quite severely by that.
Folks, this is the problem with becoming political. This is the problem with being partisan. If you're a corporation, not only do you divide those who would be all your consumers, but you also put yourself in spots where if the administration of a country changes, suddenly you can be under significantly more scrutiny than before. And you're putting yourself in positions like with China, where their geopolitical decisions can greatly influence you and your futures. None of this good for Disney, folks. We hope they'll change their ways. Inside Out 2 may be providing them with hundreds of millions of dollars of profit. But the problem with investors and the problem with the stock is that that's still a drop in the bucket compared to what can happen when things go south in the Middle Kingdom when you are tied to that horse, as well as if you are tied to the horse here of the left in America, if the tea leaves suggest that might be changing in terms of who's in power. Now, folks, we're not a political channel. We're not here to tell you who to vote for. We're not here to tell you who's right and wrong, because we believe you are so high IQ that you know exactly what to do. But we do have to report on entertainment, and when that intersects, we touch it gingerly and appropriately. Folks, I want to tell you, Vash Sky is a tremendous asset here to all that we do. Go over and subscribe to him and what he's doing with That Park Place podcast online, also known as At That Pod Place. And folks, later today, Vash is going to be doing a live show with LW Ghost, and it's going to be fantastic. It's a new podcast they're doing over there called Lou and You. It's the Hollywood Backlot Tour. Vash, I can't wait. I got to send you some more questions about that. Go ahead, Vash.
Well, slight correction, Pro. This today we're going to be doing a recorded show because Lou, unfortunately, he's going to be out for a little bit. But
he's on the road. Vash has been bragging to me about all the places he is going to eat in this particular location I can't discuss. And listen, he is living it up, folks. But it will seem live to all of you out there. I promise. It's going to be great, and it's usually live Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, folks. Make sure you check it out. It is great stuff, especially if you want to know exactly how Hollywood works. All right, folks, we've got to head out the door. On the way out, though, please click the like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms, hit the notification bell, drop a comment down below, let us know, did we do a good job of showing you that there's something interesting connecting these two companies that sunk the Dow in one, Mr. Parker. Bet you didn't know that before, but now you do. Some of you did know. Some of you out there, you're just so savvy. All right, folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Yeah, I am so excited for Independence Day. You can taste the liberty and drink in all that 4th of July freedom.
Why? You're not an American. And you don't live in America. Not to mention, you're a troll, and they're from Norway.
Wait, you're saying that trolls can't have the spirit of America? How do you explain Leslie Headland? That'd also be like saying the Acolyte isn't Star Wars.
Well, I guess it's not bad to not be American and wish for that kind of freedom. But please, don't compare this situation to the Acolyte and it being Star Wars. Nothing's that bad.
Well, gosh darn it. You've given me something new to aim for.